The lights in the training hall were bright but not harsh. Rows of cadets sat at their desks, most fidgeting with their uniforms or quietly talking to one another. The hum of the air system filled the space between voices. At the front of the room stood Commander Hawkins, a tall man with sharp eyes and a voice that could cut through noise like a blade. He was not a cruel man, but he expected discipline, and today's lesson would test more than just knowledge. Today was a simulation day, the kind that decided who got noticed and who stayed invisible. It was part of the advanced tactics course, and everyone knew what was at stake. Good performance could mean placement on real command teams. Poor marks could delay promotions for months. Some cadets had studied hard for this. Others had not. Either way, they were all here now. In the second row from the back, near the left side, sat Lila Cruz. She did not move much. Her hands were folded neatly in front of her, and her eyes were fixed on the large display screen hovering above the instructor's desk. The screen showed a star map with moving fleet positions, blinking warnings, and lines of tactical data. It was complex, but Lila didn't seem overwhelmed. If anything, she looked calm. Too calm, some thought. Around her, others whispered. Jason Mullins tapped his fingers against the desk, clearly nervous. Tara Ellis leaned over to whisper something to her seatmate, who responded with a quiet laugh. Even the ones who tried to look confident shifted in their seats. Only Lila remained still. Commander Hawkins stepped forward and tapped his console. The room dimmed slightly as the display expanded, showing a three-dimensional battlefield. "This is Scenario Delta 9, he said. "A high-risk engagement in the Corsair sector. You will each submit a tactical recommendation within 10 minutes. We'll run the simulation after. No discussion. No questions. Begin." The room came alive with activity. Consoles lit up, fingers flew across keys, and soft voices rose in debate. Some cadets worked alone. Others formed quick groups trying to pool ideas. Most followed standard protocols, choosing safe textbook responses. They knew the instructors liked predictability, better to be right than creative. But Lila didn't touch her console. She didn't even blink fast enough to show surprise. She simply watched. Watched the shifting positions, the movement of enemy ships, the timing of supply runs, the angles of attack. While others rushed to make choices, she waited. Hawkins moved through the aisles, scanning screens, checking progress. He paused by Jason's desk and frowned at the formation displayed there. "You're leaving the flank wide open," he said, sharply. Jason swallowed and began adjusting his layout. Tara caught Hawkins' eye and offered a nervous smile. He nodded once and kept walking. When he reached Lila's desk, he stopped. Her screen was blank. Her hands were still folded. She hadn't typed a single word. "Cruz," he said, voice low. "Are you aware we started?" She turned her head slightly. "Yes, sir." He waited. So did she. Finally, he asked, "And what are you waiting for?" She looked back at the main display. The full picture. He gave her a long stare but said nothing. Instead, he moved on. Minutes passed. The countdown clock ticked toward 0. People began submitting their plans. Whispers grew louder. Excitement, fear, confusion, all bubbling under the surface. Then, just before time ran out, Lila stood. No one saw her move at first. But then, slowly, the room turned to watch as she walked toward the main display. Without asking permission, she reached out, touched the interface, and with 6 swift gestures changed everything. 6 seconds, and the entire war map was rewritten. The room went silent. No one moved at first. Even Commander Hawkins stood frozen for a moment, his eyes locked on the changed display. What had been a standard military formation only seconds ago was now something else entirely. Entire fleets had been shifted. Supply routes were rerouted. Ambush points appeared where there had been none, all of it done in 6 quick movements. Lila stepped back from the console and folded her hands again, as if she had just finished a simple task like pouring a cup of tea. Then the murmurs started. What the hell did she do? Did she just override the simulation? Is that even allowed? Commander Hawkins raised a hand and the noise died down. He studied the new layout carefully. His eyes followed each change, tracing the logic behind the moves. Slowly, his expression shifted from surprise to something closer to suspicion. "Explain yourself," he said, voice firm but not yet angry. Lila didn't hesitate. "The original plan was inefficient," she said simply. "It exposed our flank and wasted resources on low-value targets. I corrected those mistakes." A few cadets exchanged glances. Some looked annoyed, others looked curious. Hawkins tapped the screen, pulling up the simulated battlefield. "You had less than 10 minutes. You didn't even start until the end. How could you possibly—" "I watched," Lila interrupted gently. "While everyone else was typing, I was analyzing. The patterns became clear after the first 3 minutes." Hawkins narrowed his eyes. "Patterns?" "Yes," she said. She reached out again and pointed at a section of space near a collapsed star system. "This area has gravitational distortions. They affect enemy sensor readings. If we position 2 frigates here and here, they'll be invisible to long-range scans. Meanwhile, by shifting our main fleet forward in a staggered line, we force the enemy into a bottleneck. Once they're inside, we collapse the outer wings and cut off their retreat." There was silence again. Then Hawkins turned to the rest of the class. "Anyone else see this?" No one answered. He looked back at Lila. "You didn't run any test simulations." "I didn't need to," she said. Some of the cadets frowned. Jason Mullins leaned forward and muttered, "Show off." Tara Ellis, however, looked impressed. "How did you figure that out so fast?" Lila shrugged slightly. "It wasn't hard. Everything was already on the board. Most people just didn't look long enough." Hawkins exhaled through his nose, clearly trying to decide whether to be angry or amazed. Finally, he said, "We'll run the simulation with both versions. Let's see if your changes actually work." Everyone turned toward the main display as the system loaded the original plan first. The simulation played out exactly as expected. Standard tactics, moderate losses, a slow push toward victory. Then came Lila's version. The screen flickered, and the new formations took shape. Within seconds, the enemy fleet moved differently, confused by the altered battlefield. The 2 hidden frigates opened fire without warning, tearing through enemy scouts. The main fleet pushed forward, forcing the enemy into the trap. Within 90 simulated seconds, the battle was over. Enemy forces were crippled. Allied losses were minimal. The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then someone whispered, "Damn." Hawkins stared at the results, then at Lila. "That was unexpected." She gave a small nod. "It was logical." Someone else asked, "Have you ever done this before?" Lila glanced at them. "Done what?" "Rework a full tactical map like that." She paused. "Not really. This was the first time I saw a scenario worth changing." More whispers spread through the room. Commander Hawkins rubbed his forehead. "Get back to your seats. We're not done yet." As the cadets returned to their desks, many eyes remained on Lila. Some were skeptical, some were jealous. But a few, just a few, were watching her like they were seeing something for the very first time. After the simulation ended, no one knew what to say at first. Some cadets looked stunned, others looked confused. A few stared at Lila like she had broken some kind of rule they didn't know existed. Commander Hawkins stood in front of the display, arms crossed, his face unreadable. He tapped the screen again, going through the data once more as if expecting to find a mistake. But there wasn't one. Lila's plan had worked perfectly. Finally, he turned around. "Class dismissed," he said, voice low. "Except for you, Cruz." The other cadets exchanged glances but didn't argue. They gathered their things quickly and left the room, whispering among themselves. Jason Mullins shot Lila a look before walking out, clearly annoyed. Tara Ellis hesitated, almost like she wanted to say something, but then followed the rest. Lila stayed seated. She waited calmly while Hawkins walked over to her desk. He pulled up a chair and sat down across from her. "Why did you do that?" he asked. "Do what?" she replied. "Change the whole map without asking. You could have messed up the simulation." "I didn't mess it up," she said. "You ran it. You saw the results." He sighed. "Yes, I saw them. That's why I'm asking. She tilted her head slightly. I only did what needed to be done. He studied her for a moment. How long have you been holding back? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked toward the empty rows of desks where just minutes ago the room had been full of students typing, arguing, and trying to impress. Not long, she finally said. Just until now. Hawkins leaned forward. You scored. Top marks on every written test. Your instructors called you smart but quiet, passive. They said you never spoke up during drills. So why today? Why change everything? Lila looked him in the eye. Because today was important. He blinked, caught off guard by the simplicity of her answer. Before he could respond, the door opened again. A woman in a dark uniform stepped inside. Commander Elena Morris. She was known for running advanced strategy programs and handpicking cadets for elite training. I heard what happened, she said, looking at Hawkins first, then at Lila. I need to talk to her. Hawkins stood slowly. Of course, he said. He gave Lila one last look before leaving the room. Morris took his seat and smiled. Though it wasn't warm, it was the kind of smile people used when they were trying to figure someone out. You're Lila Cruz, she said. Quiet student, good grades, boring, some would say. Lila didn't react. But today, Morris continued, you rewrote a war map in 6 seconds and made a bunch of instructors look like they've been teaching blind. Still, Lila remained silent. So tell me, Morris said, leaning closer. Where did that come from? Lila finally spoke. I saw a problem. I fixed it. Morris raised an eyebrow. That's all? Yes. You didn't hesitate, not once. Even Hawkins didn't see it coming. He wasn't looking hard enough. A pause. Then Morris smiled again, this time with something close to amusement. You might be exactly what we need. Lila didn't ask what she meant. Morris stood. There's a special program starting next week. Very few get invited. I'll put your name in. Lila nodded slightly. Thank you. As Morris walked toward the door, she glanced back. Don't waste it, Cruz. People like you don't come along often. Then she was gone. Lila sat alone, in the empty room, hands folded again, eyes calm. Outside, the sun was setting over the academy. Soon the halls would fill with new rumors. About her. About what she had done. Some would call her lucky. Others would call her arrogant. But Lila didn't care. For the first time, she had played the game and she had won. The next morning, the academy was buzzing. It wasn't just a quiet rumor or a passing comment between classes. People were talking, loudly, quickly, and with real interest. What Lila Cruz had done the day before was not normal. Some called it impressive. Others called it disrespectful. A few didn't know what to think. In the mess hall, cadets gathered in small groups replaying what they had seen. She just walked up and changed everything, said Jason Mullins, shaking his head, like she owned the damn board. And it worked, added Tara Ellis, sipping her coffee. Honestly, I wish I'd thought of it. You didn't, Jason snapped, annoyed. Nearby, 2 instructors stood by the serving line, speaking in low tones. Heard Morris invited her to the advanced program, one said. Yeah, replied the other. Didn't even wait for approval. She must be good. Or lucky. Lila arrived late, as she always did. She didn't rush. She never looked nervous, even now. She got her tray and sat at an empty table near the window. People glanced at her as she ate, but no one approached. Then, footsteps. Tara slid into the seat across from her. Mind if I sit? She asked. Lila gave a small nod. No. They ate in silence for a moment before Tara finally spoke again. How did you do that? She asked. I mean, really? Lila looked up. I told them. I saw a problem and fixed it. But how could you see it so fast? I watched longer than everyone else. Tara frowned. So you're saying we all missed it because we rushed? Yes. That answer was direct. Not harsh, but honest. Tara sighed. We've been training for years. Most of us have run dozens of simulations, and you just walk in, stay quiet, and fix a whole battlefield in 6 seconds? Lila put down her fork. I didn't need to learn how to follow the rules. I needed to understand why they were there. Tara blinked. What does that even mean? Most people follow orders without asking questions. I asked the questions first. Before Tara could respond, someone else showed up. A tall cadet with short hair and a serious face. Name, Daniel Parker. He was known for being one of the top performers in combat tactics. He stood beside their table and crossed his arms. You really think you're better than the rest of us? He asked. Lila didn't flinch. No. Then why act like it? She looked at him calmly. I didn't act. I acted when it mattered. Daniel narrowed his eyes. You embarrassed Hawkins. You embarrassed all of us. Did I? She asked. You changed the simulation without permission. I corrected a mistake. You made a show of it. Lila finally stood. She was shorter than him, but she didn't look away. If you saw the same mistake, why didn't you say anything? She asked. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed. It again. After a beat, he turned and walked away. Tara stared after him, then back at Lila. You don't care what people think, do you? She asked. I care about getting things right, Lila said. Tara shook her head. You're going to make a lot of enemies like that. Maybe, Lila replied, but I'd rather be right than liked. Just then, a message light blinked on Lila's wristband. It was from Commander Morris. Report to room 217 at 1400 hours. Lila read it once and nodded. Tara leaned closer. Was that Morris? Yes. What does she want now? Lila looked out the window where the sky was turning, red with sunset, to see if I can do it again, she said. Room 217 was not like the other training halls. It was smaller, quieter, and more private. Only a few cadets ever got called here. Most never left without a new rank or a warning. Lila walked in at exactly 1400 hours. Commander Morris was already waiting, sitting behind a small table with a single console between them. She didn't smile when Lila entered. She just gestured to the chair across from her. Sit, she said. Lila did. Morris tapped the console and the screen lit up with data, battle maps, fleet movements, and timestamps. All of it from yesterday's simulation. You made a lot of people uncomfortable, Morris said, watching Lila's face. Wasn't my goal, Lila replied. Doesn't matter. You did. Lila stayed quiet. Morris leaned forward. Do you know how many cadets I've trained over the years? Lila shook her head. Hundreds, maybe thousands. And out of all of them, very few see what you saw yesterday. Even fewer would have the nerve to act on it. Lila didn't respond. So tell me, Morris continued. Why now? Why change everything after staying silent for so long? Lila finally looked up. Because the plan was wrong. That's it? Yes. Morris studied her for a long moment. Then she tapped the console again. The screen changed. A new simulation loaded. No instructions, no timer. Run it. Morris, said Lila, blinked. Now? Yes. Lila took a breath and reached forward. Her fingers moved slowly at first, adjusting positions, analyzing movement paths. Within a minute, she had rewritten the entire battlefield again. This time, she added hidden supply, lines, shifted defense zones, and placed decoy ships where none had been before. Morris watched closely, then nodded once. You're not just fast, she said. You're seeing things others don't. Lila looked at her. It's not that hard. You just have to look long enough. Morris gave a small, dry laugh. Most people don't have the patience. They should. Silence filled the room for a moment. Then Morris stood. You're in the advanced program, starting tomorrow. Lila didn't react. Not with surprise, not with excitement. Just a small nod. Thank you, she said. Morris paused. Don't thank me yet. It's not going to be easy. I wasn't expecting it to be. Morris smiled slightly. Good, because we're going to throw everything at you. The next day, Lila joined the elite group. The training was harder, faster, more complex, but she kept up, always calm, always thinking. Some cadets tried to match her, some tried to beat her, a few even tried to sabotage her work. None of it worked. Week after week, she solved problems no one else could see. She rewrote strategies mid-simulation. She found weaknesses in enemy patterns before they appeared. Commanders started watching her sessions. Instructors asked her opinion during planning meetings. Soon, her name was whispered in command centers. But Lila didn't change. She still arrived late. She still spoke little. She still preferred silence over noise. And every time the board showed a problem, she fixed it. One afternoon, after another session, Tara caught up to her outside the building. "How do you do it?" she asked again. Lila stopped walking. "Do what?" she asked. "Just know what to do before anyone else?" Lila looked at her. "I don't rush, I wait. And when I see the pattern, I move." Tara sighed. "It's like you were born for this." "No," Lila said. "I just paid attention." Tara shook her head. "You're going to end up running half the fleet someday." "Maybe," Lila said. "But today, I'm just fixing the map." And with that, she turned and walked away. The advanced program was nothing like the regular training. It wasn't about memorizing tactics or following orders. It was about thinking faster, seeing deeper, and making decisions that could change the outcome of a battle before it even began. Lila was no longer just another cadet. She was one of the chosen few placed under direct command observation. Every move she made, every decision she took was watched closely by instructors who had once led real fleets into war. At first, the other cadets in the program treated her with suspicion. Some thought she didn't belong. Others believed she had just gotten lucky during that one simulation. They stopped thinking that after the first week, during a high-pressure war game, the team was given a failing scenario. Enemy forces outnumbered them 2-1, and their main fleet was cut off from support. Most cadets panicked, trying to force old strategies onto a broken battlefield. Lila didn't panic. She studied the display for almost 5 minutes while the rest of the team argued. Then, without a word, she moved 3 ships into an unguarded sector, creating a false retreat path. The enemy took the bait. Within moments, she redirected the remaining forces into a pincer movement and turned the tide. Commander Morris watched the whole thing unfold from the control room. "How did she see that?" one of the senior officers asked. Morris didn't answer right away. She just smiled slightly and said, "Because she wasn't looking at what was there. She was looking at what would be." After that, Lila became the unofficial leader of nearly every mission they ran. She never claimed authority. She never argued with anyone. But when she spoke, people listened. Even Daniel Parker, who had once challenged her in the mess hall, started watching her more than the enemy. One afternoon, after a long session, he finally approached her. "You don't talk much," he said. Lila looked up from her console. "No, but you always know what to do." "Sometimes." He crossed his arms. "How?" She paused, then said, "I listen to the silence between moves." Daniel frowned. "What does that mean?" "People think too loud," she said simply. "They rush to act before they understand why they're acting. I wait until the battlefield speaks." He stared at her for a moment, then shook his head. "You're weird, Cruz." She gave a small shrug. "Maybe." He didn't walk away. Instead, he sat down beside her. "Show me," he said. She glanced at him. "Show you what?" "How you see it. How you figure out the next move before anyone else." Lila hesitated. Then, slowly, she pulled up a past simulation and began pointing out patterns, ship formations, reaction times, hidden routes. Daniel watched carefully, asking questions when he didn't understand. By the end of the hour, he was nodding. "So it's not just speed," he said. "It's knowing where to look." "Yes," he exhaled. "Damn. You make it sound easy." It isn't, she admitted. But it's possible. From that day on, Daniel changed. He stopped trying to prove he was better than her. Instead, he started learning from her. Others noticed. Soon, more cadets were asking to train with her. Some wanted to understand her methods. Others just wanted to be near someone who could turn impossible battles into victories. Commander Morris watched all of it with quiet satisfaction. One evening, she called Lila into her office. "You've been here for a month," she said. "What, do you think?" Lila thought for a second. "It's harder than I expected." "Good. It should be." There was a pause before Morris added, "You're ready for something bigger." Lila raised an eyebrow. "Bigger than this?" "Yes." Morris tapped her desk. "We have a classified war game starting tomorrow. Only top officers are allowed to observe. I want you in it." Lila didn't ask why. She just nodded. "I'll be ready." The classified war game was unlike anything Lila had trained for before. It wasn't just another simulation run by instructors. This one was real, run by high-ranking officers, watched by military analysts, and linked to active command centers across the system. What happened here could influence actual fleet deployments. Lila sat at the center of the control room, surrounded by screens showing enemy positions, resource lines, and shifting battle zones. Beside her were senior cadets and junior officers, all with years more experience than she had. But none of them had been chosen for this, only she had. Commander Morris stood behind her, arms crossed, watching closely. "You have 5 minutes to submit a tactical plan," said Admiral Holt, the officer overseeing the exercise. "No outside help, no interruptions. Begin." Everyone started typing. Voices rose slightly as teams discussed options. Most followed standard protocols: secure the main line, hold the outer flanks, push forward with heavy support. But Lila didn't move at first. She stared at the display, eyes scanning every detail. She didn't rush. She never did. Instead, she waited for the battlefield to speak, and when it did, she acted. In under 10 seconds, she pulled up the main interface and began making changes. She moved 3 key fleets into hidden orbits around dead moons. She rerouted supply ships to act as decoys. She created a false retreat path for the enemy to follow, and then placed an ambush exactly where they would end up. Within moments, she was done. She leaned back and tapped the send button. Around her, others were still working. Some hadn't even finished their first draft. Morris raised an eyebrow. "Done already?" "Yes," Lila said. Holt looked over. "That's not enough. Time to run full analysis." "I didn't need to," she replied. He frowned but said nothing more. When the simulation started, everyone watched carefully. The enemy moved exactly as expected, pushing forward with confidence. They took the bait, following the fake retreat path right into the trap. Then Lila's hidden fleets emerged from orbit, striking fast and hard. The enemy was caught off guard. Within 30 simulated seconds, their command ship was destroyed and their forces fell into disarray. The screen blinked. Simulation complete. Allied victory with minimal losses. There was silence. Then Holt turned to her. "How did you know they'd fall for it?" "They always do," Lila said. "People follow what they expect to see. I gave them something predictable, and then changed the rules." Holt studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded, slowly. "Damn." Morris stepped forward. "What now?" Holt exhaled. "Now we take this seriously." Later that evening, Lila sat alone in the training hall going over the data again. Daniel Parker walked in and dropped into the seat beside her. "You really are something else?" he said. "No," she replied. "I just pay attention." He shook his head. "They're talking about you in command meetings. Real ones, not just academy stuff. So this isn't just about school anymore. This is about how we fight wars." Lila looked at him. "Then they should get used to change." Daniel laughed softly. "You don't care how big the room is, do you? You just walk in and fix what's broken." "Someone has to." He leaned back. "What's next for you?" Lila thought for a second. Something harder? Of course, he muttered. Outside, the sky was dark. Stars blinked like distant signals. Somewhere out there, real battles were being planned. Real decisions were being made. And soon, Lila's name would be part of them. Not because she wanted it, but because she earned it. Weeks passed, then months. What had started as a quiet moment in a training hall became something much bigger. Lila Cruz was no longer just a cadet with an unusual mind. She was now a name that officers whispered when they reviewed tactics. Her simulations were studied by commanders preparing for real battles. Her strategies were tested on live fields across the frontier. But Lila didn't change. She still worked alone when she could. She still spoke only when needed. And she still watched the board longer than anyone else. One day she was called to Command Central, a place most officers never saw until they had served for years. Morris met her at the entrance. "You're not a cadet anymore," she said. "You're being assigned to active duty." Lila nodded once. "Where?" "The Corsair front," Morris replied. "Things are getting ugly out there. We need someone who can see what others miss." "I'll go." Morris gave her a small smile. "You always say yes without hesitation. There's no point in waiting if the answer is clear." They walked into the building together. Inside, maps of space sectors covered the walls. Officers moved quickly between stations. Voices filled the air with reports, orders, and warnings. Lila was led to a private room where Admiral Holt waited. He stood with his hands behind his back, watching her closely. "You've proven yourself here," he said. "Now you have to prove it out there." He tapped a screen, and a new battlefield appeared. It was real. Not a simulation. A fleet engagement, near a collapsed star system. Allied forces were holding, but barely. "We've tried everything," Holt continued. "Standard tactics aren't working. The enemy adapts too fast." Lila stepped closer to the display. She studied the positions, the movement patterns, the timing of attacks and retreats. Then, without a word, she reached out and began making changes. Within 10 seconds, the entire plan had shifted. Holt raised an eyebrow. "You sure about this?" "Yes." He turned to a nearby officer. "Run it." The simulation loaded. The battle played out under Lila's new strategy. Within moments, the enemy was caught off guard. Supply lines were cut. Ambushes unfolded. Exactly as planned. Within 60 simulated seconds, the battle was won. Holt looked at her. "How did you see that so fast?" "Because I've seen it before," she said. "Just in different shapes." Not long after, Lila was sent to the Corsair front. Her first mission was a success. Her second, even more so. Within weeks, she had changed the course of 3 major engagements. Officers who had doubted her now followed her lead. Yet she never asked for rank or recognition. When asked why, she simply said, "Someone has to watch the board. I'd rather do that than chase titles." Years later, her name was known across the colonies. Cadets studied her strategies like ancient texts. Officers quoted her moves like proverbs. Some called her a genius. Others called her dangerous. But none could deny what she had done. And somewhere, far beyond the academy halls and quiet training rooms, a fleet moved exactly as she had planned. Because, while others fought the battles, Lila Cruz had already seen the end, before it had even begun.